Rico lived in a wooden house by the shore with his mother, Liza. His father had passed away when he was 5, leaving behind little more than a rusted guitar and a stack of old CDs, Elvis Presley classics. For Rico, those songs weren't just melodies. They were memories of his father, echoes of laughter, gentle hums before bedtime, the sound of love that never left even when the man himself was gone. Every night, when the waves whispered against the sand, Rico would take that same guitar, its strings frayed and tuning imperfect, and sing along to those Elvis songs. His favorite was, "Can't Help Falling in Love." He didn't always get the English words right, but he sang with a sincerity that no translation could ever match. Neighbors would often stop by outside their window just to listen. His voice had a warmth that carried through the night, a tone both innocent and haunting, the kind of sound that could make even strangers pause mid-step. His mother always smiled, watching quietly from the doorway. She knew those songs were his way of keeping his father's spirit alive. But life wasn't easy. Liza sold handmade shell jewelry to tourists. Some days they had enough for rice and fish, other days only rice. Still, Rico never complained. "Mama," he'd say, "one day I'll sing for Papa in heaven, and for you on TV." Liza would laugh softly, brushing his hair aside. "Maybe you will, my love. Maybe you will." One afternoon, a group of foreigners visited the island for a community event. Among them was a British volunteer named Daniel, who noticed the boy singing near the market, a shy smile, bare feet, and a voice that silenced the busy street. Daniel pulled out his phone, recorded a short clip, and uploaded it online with the caption, "Little Elvis of Cebu, pure soul." Within days, the video exploded. Millions of views. Comments flooded in from all over the world. People saying they cried, that the boy sounded like an angel, that his heart spoke through every note. And among those who saw it, was a producer from a global talent competition called World Stage Got Talent. 2 months later, Rico and his mother found themselves boarding a plane for the very first time, heading to London, the city of dreams, lights, and the home of Simon Cowell. For a boy who had never even been to Manila, the journey felt surreal. Every sound, every sight, from the airport's echoing announcements to the clouds beneath his window, felt like magic. Liza held his hand tightly the whole way, whispering prayers in silence. When they arrived at the studio, the energy was electric. Cameras, bright lights, people from every corner of the world chasing their dreams. Rico, in his tiny denim jacket and shiny black shoes, looked up at the stage that stretched endlessly before him. "Are you ready, my love?" his mother asked, kneeling to adjust his collar. Rico nodded, clutching his father's old guitar, the same one with the cracks and faded varnish. Backstage, a producer knelt beside him. "So, Rico, what are you singing today?" He smiled shyly. "A song for my papa, and for Elvis." The man grinned. "Then let's make them both proud." The crowd inside was restless, chatting and cheering as the host introduced the next contestant. "Please welcome, from the Philippines, 10-year-old Rico." The spotlight found him as he stepped onto the vast stage, almost disappearing behind the massive microphone stand. The judges looked on curiously. Simon leaned forward, eyebrows raised, as he saw the small boy holding an old, battered guitar. Rico adjusted the mic carefully, glancing toward his mother in the wings. She mouthed, "You can do it." The room fell silent. The music hadn't even started, yet something about his presence drew every eye. Simon smiled, faintly. "Hello there, young man. What's your name?" "Rico, sir." "And where are you from?" "From Cebu, in the Philippines." Simon nodded. "Beautiful place. And what will you be singing today?" Rico took a deep breath. "Can't Help Falling in Love, by Elvis Presley." A murmur of appreciation moved through the audience. Even the judges looked pleasantly surprised. Simon leaned back, arms crossed. "That's a big song for a little guy." Rico smiled. "My papa used to sing it. He said Elvis sings with heart, so I'll try too." Simon softened, his expression changing from curiosity to something warmer. "Well, we'd love to hear it." The first gentle strum of the guitar echoed across the room. The sound wasn't perfect, but it carried history, the kind of sound you feel rather than hear. Rico closed his eyes and began to sing. "Wise men say, only fools rush in." The first note silenced the entire theater. His voice was clear, tender, trembling slightly, but pure, raw, and impossibly sincere. It wasn't just the tone, it was the emotion behind every syllable. As he sang the second line, "But I can't help falling in love with you," the camera panned across the audience, people frozen, mouths slightly open, some already welling with tears. Rico swayed gently, as if in a dream. Each strum of the guitar matched his heartbeat. His small fingers pressed the strings with precision beyond his years. When he reached the bridge, his voice soared higher, almost angelic. "Take my hand. Take my whole life too." Simon leaned forward, his eyes locked on the boy. You could see it. The exact moment the critic disappeared, replaced by the father, the human, the listener. Because for Simon, this wasn't just a song anymore. It was a story. A child from the other side of the world, singing about love, loss, and faith with the kind of honesty that cuts deeper than any performance ever could. As Rico sang the final line, "For I can't help falling in love with you," his voice quivered, almost breaking. He strummed the last chord softly and let it ring out into the silent hall. For a moment, there was nothing. No sound. Just stillness. Then, the audience erupted. A thunder of applause, cheers, cheers, people rising to their feet. Simon didn't move. He simply stared, his eyes glistening, lips slightly parted, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Finally, he stood up slowly, his hands clapping. The other judges joined him. Rico looked around, overwhelmed. He smiled nervously, bowing his head. The host whispered into the mic, "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we just witnessed something truly special." As the applause continued, Simon finally spoke. His voice was low, softer than usual. "Rico," he said, "I've heard thousands of singers, but sometimes, someone walks on this stage and reminds me why I started doing this in the first place." The crowd hushed again, listening. "You didn't just sing that song. You lived it. You felt every word, and we all felt it too." Rico smiled shyly, clutching his guitar tighter. Simon continued, "And if your father was watching, I think he's smiling right now." Liza, backstage, wiped her eyes. She whispered, "Thank you, Lord." Simon looked down for a moment, composing himself. "You know what? You've got something very, very special." He looked at the other judges, then back at Rico. "And I think the world needs to see more of this kind of heart." He reached out his hand, and pressed the golden buzzer. The golden confetti exploded across the stage as the music swelled, and Rico's tiny hands flew to his face in disbelief. Liza ran out from backstage, tears streaming as she wrapped her son in her arms. Simon stood, smiling genuinely, clapping as the confetti rained down. For the first time in a long time, the man who had seen it all, said nothing. The confetti shimmered under the stage lights like tiny pieces of sunlight. Rico stood in the middle of it all, the guitar still slung across his chest, his small frame trembling with disbelief. His mother held him tightly, whispering his name again and again as the audience continued to cheer. Simon Cowell remained standing, his hands resting on the judge's table, eyes fixed on the boy who had just silenced an entire world. For years, he had seen countless performers chase fame, technique, and perfection, but this moment reminded him what real music was. As the confetti began to settle, Simon leaned toward the microphone. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Sometimes," he said, "music reminds us that love never dies." "Thank you, Rico, for reminding me of that today." The audience applauded again, this time softer, deeper, like a collective heartbeat. Backstage, the host guided Rico and his mother through a tunnel lined with golden sparkles. Crew members congratulated them, even camera operators were wiping their eyes. The showrunner smiled and said, "Kid, you just broke the internet." Rico looked up, confused. "I did." Liza laughed through tears. "He means everyone will know your name now, Anik." Minutes later, Simon walked quietly into the backstage area. He wasn't scheduled for interviews yet, he simply wanted to see the boy up close without the cameras. When Rico noticed him, he froze, eyes wide. Simon knelt so he could look the boy in the eye. "That was one of the most honest performances I've ever heard," he said. "You didn't try to sound like Elvis. You sang like yourself, and that's what made it magic." Rico smiled shyly. "Thank you, sir. My papa used to sing it when I was small." Simon hesitated, then asked gently, "Is your father here with you?" Rico shook his head. He's in heaven. But I think he heard me. For a second, Simon couldn't answer. Something in that child's certainty struck a chord deep within him. He finally nodded. I think so too. Then, softly, and he's very proud. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Never stop singing, all right. The world needs that heart of yours. That night, footage of Rico's audition flooded every corner of social media. Clips of Simon's tearful silence, the golden confetti, and the boy's trembling smile became headlines. Simon Cowell left speechless by 10-year-old Filipino Elvis. The little voice that stopped the world. Within 24 hours, the performance had over 50 million views. Celebrities reposted it. Elvis tribute bands sent messages of admiration. Even Priscilla Presley shared the video, writing, "Elvis would have loved this." In Cebu, the entire neighborhood gathered around a single small television set at Liza's neighbor's house. They screamed with pride when they saw Rico and his mother on screen. The sea breeze carried their cheers through the night, blending with the same waves that once listened to Rico sing alone. Weeks passed. The show continued with semifinals and grand finales, but people still talked about the boy who made Simon speechless. When Rico returned for the live finale, the arena was packed beyond capacity. The host welcomed him back with a grin. Ladies and gentlemen, the golden buzzer that captured the world's heart, Rico from the Philippines. This time, he wore a white suit reminiscent of Elvis's 1970s performances, tailored just enough to fit his small frame. But when the lights dimmed, it wasn't showmanship that filled the air, it was quiet reverence. Rico began his finale performance with, "If I Can Dream." His voice, now more confident yet just as tender, echoed through the hall. There must be lights burning brighter. Somewhere. Behind him, a large screen displayed images of his hometown, the ocean, the small wooden house, his mother smiling through tears. As the song built to its powerful refrain, Rico lifted his eyes to the sky. Out there in the dark, there's a beckoning candle. The camera cut to Simon. His lips were pressed together, eyes glistening. When the final note rang out, he stood before anyone else could move, applauding with both hands high. The audience roared. Judges hugged each other. The host whispered, "This kid just made history." After the show, Simon joined the judges for their comments. He leaned toward his microphone again, his voice thick with emotion. "I've been doing this for a long time," he said slowly, "and it's easy to become numb. You see talent after talent, and you forget what it feels like to feel. But then someone like you comes along and reminds us all that music is love, and love is eternal." He paused, blinking back tears. "Thank you, Rico." Rico bowed deeply, his voice trembling. "Thank you for listening." The host announced that the voting lines were open. By morning, millions had voted. When the results came in, the entire world seemed to hold its breath. And the winner of World Stage Got Talent is Rico from the Philippines. Confetti burst again, brighter this time, accompanied by a thunder of applause. Rico covered his face as his mother ran onto the stage once more. Simon joined them, shaking Liza's hand warmly. "You raised a miracle," he said. Backstage, as the celebrations continued, a journalist asked Simon, "You looked truly emotional tonight. What was going through your mind?" Simon paused before answering. "You know," he said softly, "I've heard perfect voices, I've seen technical brilliance. But perfection doesn't move me. Honesty does. That little boy sang with his whole soul, and that's something you can't fake." He smiled faintly. "Sometimes, silence says more than words. That's why I couldn't speak." Months later, Rico and his mother returned to Cebu. The airport was filled with neighbors, students, even local officials, all cheering his name. TV crews followed them to their small home, where Rico placed his trophy next to his father's old guitar. That evening, he walked to the beach, barefoot again, the same waves lapping at his feet. He looked up at the stars and began to hum softly, "Wise Men Say," the song that had carried him across oceans. Liza joined him, holding his hand. "Do you think he's proud?" she asked. Rico nodded, smiling. "I think he's singing with me." Far away, in a quiet office in London, Simon watched a replay of the finale on his computer. The room was dim except for the glow of the screen. When the final note faded, he leaned back, exhaled slowly, and whispered to himself, "That's why we do this." He opened his email and sent a message to his production team, "Find him a mentor. I want to see what he does next." Within weeks, offers poured in, record labels, charities, invitations to perform around the world. But Rico never forgot where he came from. The first thing he did was organize a free concert in his hometown to raise funds for local schools. Thousands came. The entire beach became a stage. As he sang under the open sky, his voice stronger than ever, people held candles and swayed to the rhythm. The same song that once echoed through the tiny windows of his home now resonated across miles of ocean. Simon sent a video message for the event. "Rico," he said, "I wish I could be there, but remember this, you remind us all that greatness isn't about winning. It's about giving your heart to the world." Rico smiled at the screen, then turned to the crowd. "This is for my papa, for my mama, and for everyone who believes that dreams can start anywhere, even on a beach in Cebu." He began to sing one last time. "Take my hand, take my whole life too." The crowd joined in. Even the waves seemed to keep time. As the song ended, the wind carried his voice far beyond the shore, toward every heart that had ever needed hope. And so, the boy who once sang to the sea had now sung to the world. Music had carried him from loss to love, from silence to standing ovations, from a forgotten island to a global stage, and, most beautifully of all, it had made even Simon Cowell speechless. The camera would fade on that image. A boy, a guitar, a mother's proud smile, and a horizon painted with light. Because some stories don't end, they just keep singing. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to share it with someone who still believes in dreams. Music, love, and kindness, they're all connected. Thank you for watching, and remember, no matter where you come from, your voice matters. Keep believing, keep dreaming, and keep spreading love.